Good morning. Please excuse our delay this morning. I'd like to say that the organizers have said that we will postpone the commencement of today's session for half an hour. So we won't have our pause for coffee until half an hour later than scheduled. I'd like to say that my name is Tonio Poveda. I am the coordinator of the Spanish organization of HIV AIDS. We have 70 different entities within Spain encompassed in our organization under the umbrella of it. And there's another important number of organizations in addition that are GLBT, who work with different populations and members of the communities. This allows our entity to be very enriched in diversity. And since this is World Pride time, and this is the World Conference on Human Rights, and here we're talking about HIV and AIDS, I'd like to congratulate everyone for Gay Pride. The 28th of June is the 47th anniversary, if I'm not mistaken, of Stonewall. I wouldn't like to extend myself too much now. We'll begin with a documentary film by a person I will introduce later. He has lived practically the entire history of the LGBT movement in Spain, and much of his life has been he spent suffering HIV. We'll talk about the different stigma that a person with HIV has to live with. This is a documentary for Ayos Cabrera, and now we'll begin.
Me llamo Quique Poveda, nací en Alicante en el año 1954, o sea que ahora tengo 50 años. Mido 1,72 y peso 83 kilos. Soy seropositivo desde que tenía 26 años. Soy activista gay desde hace mucho tiempo. Empecé en Murcia cuando tenía 18 años, en uno de los frentes de liberación homosexual. Entonces estaba estudiando medicina. Luego me enganché a la heroína y dejé el frente y también la medicina. Por aquella época era militante del Partido Comunista, pero me echaron por maltón, a mí y a mi amigo José Miguel. Queríamos llevar a un congreso una ponencia sobre liberación sexual. Nos llamó a su despacho el secretario regional del Partido de Murcia y nos echó. He estado en el talego varias veces por robo a farmacias. En las farmacias antiguas había buen material. Robábamos una cocaína y una morfina de muy buena calidad. El opio estaba regular. También robábamos muchas anfetaminas. Bustais, masivamatos, rinomales, sidrinas, centraminas y milips. Todo aquello que pillábamos estaba muy bueno, sin cortar y sobre todo muy orgánico. Pero al final la jodimos y nos pillaron en un par de ocasiones. Lo reconozco, he pasado muy buenos ratos con las drogas. Bajo sus efectos he pensado, he bailado y he follado muchísimo. Los chutes de coca te ponen brillante, las mezclas eran muy divertidas. El speed y las anfetas me daban una capacidad de pensar que solo se puede tener si vas puesto. La mezcla de heroína y cocaína es especial, sobre todo si te la inyectas. A la brillantez mental de la coca y a su excitación tienes que sumarle la paz que te da el caballo. Desaparecen los problemas, todo es fácil. En el rollo yonki he sido rechazado por maricón. Todo el mundo sabía que Paquito era mi novio. Entre maricones he sido rechazado por ladrón, por yonki, por ser positivo. También he sido discriminado porque, aun siendo bastante masculino, me gusta que me inculen. Y eso también estigmatiza, incluso en el mundo gay. Cuando me infecté con el VIH era muy joven. En el 86 apenas se hablaba de SIDA. Me jodieron la vida. Tiraban los cubiertos, la gente no quería follar conmigo, no quería compartir jeringuillas, hicieron pintadas en la puerta, los médicos no querían operarme las ranas. Algunas personas me retiraban la palabra. Ya me quedé muerta cuando un cirujano me dijo que no podía follar en la vida. La primera vez que intenté suicidarme fue cuando tenía 21 años. Paquito y yo estábamos en la Parte, en módulos diferentes. Pensamos en cortarnos las venas, pero la enfermería estaba llena y nos reportaron de nuevo a nuestros módulos. Tengo la cara llena de marcas de unos hongos que me metí por vena con un chute en mal estado. Un día, en el cine, viendo la emisión, la fiebre se subió. Día tras día, la cabeza se me fue echando, bultos de pus, y finalmente directo al hospital. Las cándidas entraban en mi vena hasta lo cuanto acabé. Me gusta vestirme de Red King, o de King Gay, como quieras llamarlo. Tenía un perrito pitbull, se llamaba Bonito, pero como los perros tienen que tener un nombre corto para que se enteren del cuerpo, lo llamábamos Zumo. Era muy listo, se tiraba los pedos en la terraza. La gente cuando se cruzaba con nosotros en la calle se asustaba y me exigía que le pusiera cruzar. Hoy Hugo, bueno, sus cenizas, están en la bahía de Bangalore, en Irlanda del Norte. Allí hay un mar muy grande y espero que lo pase bien en compañía de los héroes republicanos que también descansan aquí. Tengo hepatitis C y según algunos médicos me ha producido cirrosis. Según otros tendría que esperar a ver si tengo varices esofágica. En el caso que tengo un basilote parece que estoy preñado. El infectólogo me quiere tratar a partir de hoy con interferón girado y ribavirina. Y por lo que sé el tratamiento sienta fatal. Como veis he tenido muchos problemas, pero se me complicaron las cosas cuando enfermé de la boca y del culo. En la boca tenía condilomas y en el ojete condilomas y además una displasia. Supuraba todos los días, iba siempre con una columna de gasa para no manchar los gallumbos ni los pantalones. Tenía un dolor muy fuerte y los perros se acercaban curiosos a verme. En el Hospital Universitario de Alicante, como en otras muchas ciudades, no tenían ni puta idea de cómo tratar esto del virus del papiloma humano. Así que tuve que pedir dinero a mi madre y exiliarme a Badalona, a un hospital al que llaman Cantuti, pero que se llama Germás, Ries y Puyol. Tenía que ir todas las semanas, tantos aviones y tantos trenes me causaban mucho estrés y sufrimiento. En lo único que pensaba era en el suicidio y finalmente me suicidé en Europa. Un soleado día de febrero, tras 2 operaciones de ajo y una de boca, saqué a pasear a Hugo y al llegar a casa introduje todas las pastillas que tenía en la batidora. Las trituré y me las tragué profundamente. Pero la cosa no salió como yo pretendía. Como no cogía el teléfono fijo, ni el móvil, ni contestaba los mails, ni el telefonillo, ni respondía a los MSS, vinieron a casa 2 colegas que estaban espiando por si algo iba mal. Efectivamente, la sospecha estaba justificada. Me encontraban allí, desparramado junto a la cama, en el suelo. Bueno, ahora me he diagnosticado un trastorno bipolar. Y con este trastorno, en una fase maníaca, me tiré a Marrakech. De allí viajé a Londres con idea de quedarme, pero me gasté la pasta que llevaba pasando los fines de semana entre Belfast y París. Ropa, hombres, billetes, cuadros, masones, gasté toda la pasta. Acabé con una depresión que no me dejaba salir de la cama y vinieron a buscarme. Vino mi hermana y me llevó de vuelta a casa. En las fases maníacas he pasado los días más felices de mi vida y he echado los mejores trucos. Soy diabético, tomo muchas pastillas. Por la mañana tomo 3 para la depresión, con un estabilizador del ánimo y una más para el azúcar. Al mediodía tomo 3 para el VIH. Por la noche ni te cuento. 1,5 del estabilizador del ánimo, otro antidepresivo diferente a los 3 de la mañana, 2 pastillas y media para dormir y un pastillón para la tos, y una de la vitamina para el trastorno bipolar. A partir de hoy tendré que tomar 3 de ribavirina en el desayuno y 3 de ribavirina con la cena, y un pinchazo de interferón todos los días. Además, soy fumador, me fumo entre 50 y 60 cigarrillos diarios. En la actualidad estoy viviendo en Madrid y hace muchos años que dejé la heroína y la dictadura. Esta noche empezaré a inyectarme el interferón y los controles me los haré en el hospital para mi casa. La verdad es que me da muy mal rollo empezar el tratamiento. Dicen que para muchos es como pasar una gripe de un año. También tiene como efectos secundarios la depresión y los intentos de suicidio. Ahora, esperando, he hecho mucho de menos la heroína, pero no podría aguantar los malos rollos de ser junkie. Dicen que esto de ser junkie no se cura en la vida. De todas maneras, los reyes están buenos, ¿sí?
Sí, alguien tenía que yo no me entero. Yo no llevaba ese pinchar la boca de la gente.
Hitler nos lo ponía a nosotros. Hace más de 15 años que retomé el activismo y me hice activista también en temas de VIH-Sida. De ahí este ejercicio de visibilidad. Creo en la ecuación visibilidad igual a vida. Te cuento todo esto porque al contarlo me siento vivo. Mi vida está llena de huellas, de estigmas, de vida. Supongo que tú también tienes tus marcas. Los estigmas se perciben cuando tiran de tu vida.
Bueno, ahora si nos pueden dar...
Well, now if you could please give us some light. As I said, this short documentary, we've got the protagonist here with us, Quique Poveda. Quique Poveda is a very dear friend, colleague of the struggle, and furthermore, if he's here at this conference, it's thanks to his work in September of 2016 when he heard that there would be a conference on human rights for LGBT. He decided that he would be here and we'd have to deal with HIV in a special way. He will come up now. I would ask for a big applause for him because he's going to answer questions after our debate about the documentary, but I think we need to give him a big applause because he came up with the idea of this conference that has become a reality.
Y ahora pediría al resto de ponentes que también subieran.
And I would also like to ask the other speakers to please come up, the rest of the panel.
Bueno, yo antes de empezar sí que me gustaría
Before starting, I would first like to reflect upon something. I think this panel is especially important. We're going to understand through them the reality of many different countries and places in the world. I believe that this conference that's within the scope of the summit is very important. In my opinion, within the group, the LGBT group, we have important challenges, many, but the largest challenge, in my opinion, especially for gay and transsexual men and women, is the HIV challenge. About the scientific community is making big progress in treatment, in research. However, there is another reality that is called inequality, discrimination of all sorts, and it's very painful. I would like to make this clear that the big multinational corporations continue oftentimes with impossibly high prices that make it impossible for these new medical advances to reach the rest of the population. And lastly, we've got stigma. I won't go into that too much because we will have Maria Jose Fuster later talking about that. But I will turn the floor over first to, let's see if I can see the Sherry Kazi. He is a researcher and an activist of HIV AIDS in Pakistan. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me here. Um, I'm going to talk a little bit about analysis of HIV situation amongst MSM and transgenders in Pakistan. So this is how I'm going to go through my presentation. I'm going to tell a little bit about legal and cultural barriers that are present in Pakistan and the HIV situation, the community-based organizations, and research that I conducted myself amongst MSMs and transgenders. And then we will conclude. So just a little bit about Pakistan. It is actually an Islamic Republic of Pakistan, and we have two set of laws that are present in Pakistan. One is Sharia law, and the other is Anglo-Saxon law. So actually, both these laws are here. They prosecute LGBT community and the sexual practices. In the Sharia law, even though it's not massively practiced in Pakistan, in some areas of Pakistan, like the north of Pakistan, it is still being used to harass and prosecute same-sex activities. So like in the Sharia law, you have a penalty which could be like 100 lashes if you are found having same-sex behavior, or you can also be stoned to death. Um, but I have to say that so far the only cases that we've seen in the north is like people in this who practice the same sex are usually lashed. People who are married to a woman and then they still have sex with men, and if they are caught, then they are given a severe punishment. There's also this section 377 that we inherited from the colonial era, in which people can be sentenced to 10 years of imprisonment. But I also have to say that this law is still being used by the law enforcement agencies to harass the LGBT community if they are caught having sex. If you ever come to Pakistan, you notice that there's this huge segregation of genders. You'd see that in the bus, there's a female section and then there's a male section. And so there's this whole segregation of sexes, genders. And so there's a lot of homo-affectionate, or some people call it homo-ignorant environment. So two men can get away with holding hands or hugging each other or even kissing each other on the cheek, and no one would think that that's considered as homosexual. It's just considered as a brotherly love. So there's a small space where the LGBT community can relax, but then again, if they're caught having sex, then they could be prosecuted, and there are some severe punishments that are present in our books. As far as LGBT rights are concerned, I have to say that the transgender people have recently gained recognition, and we actually have the third gender option on our passports. And there's also a lot of transgenders who ran for election to become the parliamentarians in 2012. So there is a lot of progress when it comes to transgenders. The transgender community, who are historically known as hijras, they are also found in India and Bangladesh. So this community has formed their own language, they have their own economical system, and they have their own culture. So they've also made family within the transgender network. So transgender community are sort of, you don't, usually they have this whole structure, and people usually, if they mess with them, then the whole community comes together and then they get back to them. So transgender community actually have a lot of rights when it comes to Pakistan. But the lesbians, when I talk about transgenders, I mean trans women, not trans men. Trans men are highly suppressed, and the lesbians are most suppressed in Pakistan because the genders are segregated, and usually the society forms this whole network of protection or suppression on women, and usually they don't it's just very suppressing for a woman. With the gay people, it's, like I said, it's a homo-affectionate environment. Like me and my boyfriend, we live together in Islamabad. We've been living together for the past 5 years, and people just don't think about it. They just think that it's just brothers living together. So just a small space. So there isn't a lot of movement for LGBT rights in Pakistan. There was a gay pride that was arranged by US Embassy in 2013. But what happened was, right after the pride that happened within the premises of the embassy, the news was leaked, and there were massive protests on the streets that this is a Western agenda, this is a Western disease that is being enforced on our innocent people. So there were these protests that happened against the gays and lesbian people. If I talk about HIV situation in Pakistan, it is a concentrated epidemic. It has not been spilled to the general population. The most HIV positive cases are found in injecting drug users. The prevalence goes all the way to 40%. And there is a data available for hijra sex workers, which are also transgender sex workers and male sex workers. For a very long time, we've been trying to advocate for inclusion of MSM population in the government setting, so that research can be done and more data can be gathered for MSM populations. But for a very long time, the government said there are no MSM populations in Pakistan. There are only male sex workers. People don't have sex with men because they desire sex. It's because they have the financial needs for it. But then we advocated, the organizations that are locally working there, they advocated for it. And now recently, the government have published a report where they've actually accepted that there are MSM population present and they don't have the data. So right now, in 2017, they've done this research that also gathers the data on HIV prevalence amongst MSM, but this data is not available yet. This is a projection that was also made from the National and Provincial AIDS Control Program. So they've actually not only acknowledged that there's MSM population present in Pakistan, they also have projected that in the future, MSM population is going to be the most vulnerable, and in the next few years, MSM, there will be more intense cases of MSM population, and the prevalence is going to increase amongst MSM population and the transgender people. So usually when people talk about transgender and HIV, then they consider them as sex workers, but the government still has hard time acknowledging that people actually have sex because they desire sex. So even within the transgender paradigm, they think that it's all sex work, and people need money, that's why they have sex. So, but still, there is some change. Government is actually taking a stance that there can be transgenders and MSMs who would have sex with other men and women just because they desire having sex. These are the pictures of some of the community-based organizations. These were formed with the support of Global Fund. I've actually done a research in collaboration with these organizations, and I gathered some data which actually helps me build a little bit foundation for more research when it comes to MSM vulnerability and transgender vulnerability. So I gathered the data from all these 6 organizations, and I made this treatment cascade that why is the adherence so low amongst HIV positive people? Why don't adhere to ARTs? And so I gathered the data from these 6 organizations, and there were around 450 HIV positive people, but as you can see that a lot of people, they would not register, and then they would not continue the ARTs. So the government says that the figures of, there are around 100,000 HIV positive people living in Pakistan. But they also acknowledge that a lot of them, they don't get tested, because the only reason why you get tested for HIV is when you have a surgical operation, and that's about it. You don't get tested. So the only data that they could gather was from a little bit organizations that are working and the people who got their surgeries done. So there's a lot of other people in Pakistan, but their data is missing because they don't get tested for HIV. And if they get tested for HIV, then they just don't register in the government treatment centers. For the MSM and transgender population, I did a research with 100 HIV positive. I did an interview with 100 HIV positive MSM and transgender people. So this actually helped me understand that why was adherence low within these 2 particular populations. So this was a research that I did with 100 HIV positive MSM and transgender people, just to understand that why the reasons for adherence to ARTs was so low, and what were the challenges that MSM and trans population was facing while accessing treatment services. So, okay, so one of the findings about my research was that people who are younger, this is something that is, I think, something that we all face or feel, understand, is the people who are the youngest, they are most out of care. They don't adhere to treatment, they don't adhere to ARTs. So as you age further along, you adhere more to treatment. So this, within the MSM and transgender people, I found the same dynamics. Literacy was also one of the factors. People who were not educated at all, they were most out of care, and as you progressed, people who were most educated, they were more in care. People who made money which was like more than 10,000 rupees, which is equal to, I guess, 100 euros a month. They adhered to treatment. So finances also mattered a lot to make ensure that people adhere to treatment. Relationship status also mattered a lot. People who were married, they adhered more to treatment than people who were single and were not seeing anyone. So one of the findings that I found was that people who were involved in sex work, they were most out of care, and people who were not into sex work, they were in care. So, and another dynamics that I found that most of the people who were less than 30 years old, they were more into sex work. So you can see that the young people in Pakistan, they were more on risk when it comes to, you know, contracting further HIV or not saving themselves from further harm or infections. So this is also a graph of people. As you age, you get more into in-care and the blue graph. And so as you age, you get more in-care and if you're younger, so you're just most out of care. This is what I said earlier, that people who were youngest, they were more involved in sex work. So when I asked them if they had any knowledge on HIV before they got tested for HIV, they said 65% said that when they got tested, they had no knowledge of HIV. So this also shows that there's a huge gap within the whole system, that there needs to be more education, there needs to be more educational material provided from the government, how to save themselves from further harm. So I asked a lot of them that were you satisfied with the way the confidentiality was maintained at the treatment centers, and they said yes. But when I went to treatment center myself, I saw this small room where there were like hundreds of HIV positive people all clustered together, and everyone knew about everyone else. So the whole perception of what confidentiality actually means is something different for the people in Pakistan. They don't understand that if you are forced to sit with 100 other HIV positive people, your confidentiality is maintained, but it is not. So even though the survey said there's a lot of satisfaction when it comes to confidentiality, it wasn't. Another research that I did with IDLO, I interviewed 100 transgender people, and I asked them, have you ever felt violated about your rights? And around 70–80% said, no, we are all fine. There was never an incident where our rights were violated. And then I asked them, have you ever been raped? And then 70% of them would say yes. And I would ask them, have you ever been harassed by police? And then 70–80% would say yes. So it's just an understanding of what your rights are, what confidentiality is mean is something different and alien for people in Pakistan. A lot of people did not know their CD4. The treatment center staff did not ensure that people would know that what CD4 is and how important it is for them to understand their CD4. So a lot of people did not even know what their CD4 was. There was people who were out of care, they were more into drug use, and people who were in care, they did not use drug, and people who were out of care, they would use drug. So the conclusion was that the treatment center staff is very rude, they are very impolite, they don't know how to talk to people who come to them for help. So there's a lot of need for the capacity building of the treatment staff who are working at the government treatment centers. There needs to be a youth-centric policy so that the youth who are most vulnerable, they need more support and more attention and more resources. More service delivery centers are needed. I mean, personally, I saw a young boy once sitting in a station of a small city. He was sitting outside the brothel. So there are actually male brothels in Pakistan instead of female brothels. It's just easier for the management to make sure that the boys are present there instead of women. So you go to them and you have sex with any boy for 50 cents or half a euro. And usually these boys are very young, like young as 13 or 14 years old. I saw this very young boy who was sitting outside a brothel, and he had yeast infection all over his mouth. And he could not even talk. Even though I could speak the local language there, I asked him, how are you? And then he just took out his slip, which said that he was HIV positive and he needs to go to Karachi, which is like Barcelona from here. So I said, how are you going to go? And then he could not respond. And he could not even talk because there was severe yeast infection in his mouth. So, I mean, if there was a treatment center available in that city, probably he would not have to go all the way to Karachi. But there wasn't any treatment center, so it was just so sad. And there are needs for better ARTs regime, because the ART regime that we have severe side effects and people usually just discontinue. And there is a need to education population of HIV/AIDS, and there is need for nutritional support and better measures to protect the confidentiality. This is pictures of some of the field staff that is working within the organizations there. Thank you.